Hi guys, it's Peter again here, and I'm back with eminent ex-NASA physicist and nuclear scientist Tom Campbell. And I really want to just shoot a follow-up video based upon the last one that we just shared with you about Tom's Kickstarter campaign. Thank you so much for everybody that's backed it already. We're already over like $86-something thousand, which is amazing. And we've had a lot of feedback from people that want to know some more because they want to get involved, but they want a little bit more context. So I thought we'd just shoot another quick video and give you a little bit of background so you can have a more of a basis of understanding, so you can see why this is going to change history, why this is important, why we're passionate about it. And to do that, I want to give you a little bit of history. And if you go back to, let's say, 400 million years of fossil records, we have some definitive evidence that the nature of life, Tom, really is to evolve into more and more complexity, or more expressions of complexity. And if you look at where we are now, I mean, it's beautiful, but the laws of nature really operate upon two primary dictates, growth and contribution. Now, the membrane between the two is cooperation. You can't grow and contribute and become more complex without being able to cooperate. A single-celled amoeba versus a 50 trillion cell human body requires a little more cooperation in the body, otherwise we're going to be fighting with each other ourselves. So when Tom on the video said that love was the answer, he wasn't just talking in metaphors. Ultimately, the expression of evolution leads to greater and greater levels of cooperation, which ultimately expresses love.
Exactly.
And so, what Tom is trying to do is really bring to the mainstream a scientific basis for that. Now, why is that important? Let's fast forward from 400 million years ago to a few hundred years ago. And for many centuries, humanity's primary truth provider was the church. And really, they had the domain around trying to explain metaphysics. And then we came through Copernicus into Galileo, through into Newton, and we essentially developed the sciences. And the sciences, through essentially observation, reverse engineered the rule sets around how the physical world worked. Right. And science for the last few hundred years has been very focused on materialism, which unfortunately has led to a belief blindness, similar to how religion had sort of trapped mankind into a fixed belief system for many centuries prior to that. And so, guess what? Einstein comes along, Niels Bohr comes along, and 1929, quantum mechanics kind of throws a bowling ball into the mix. Right. And materialism at that point starts to have shaky ground. Now the challenge, and this is a quote from you, Tom, and I love this, and you say that science, the essence of doing good science is that the hypothesis should move to fit the data. And what we've had from many decades now in traditional science is that science in its traditional Newtonian paradigm has been ignoring the data so that they can stick with their current paradigm.
Yes.
And that's not real science.
No.
That's dogma, and that is a projection of our belief system based on an addiction to what we currently know and not being open to what actually is.
Right. Yeah. That's true. When the scientists met quantum mechanics told them that our reality was not material-based, because they cannot explain quantum mechanics with material-based description. Rather than say, then our understanding of reality must be wrong, because our idea of materialism doesn't apply here, they said, oh, our idea is fine, quantum mechanics is just weird. You see, which is what you said. They sidestepped the reality that their theory no longer was able to describe the results of experiments, but rather than look for a better theory that had a different viewpoint in a larger context, they decided to keep their beliefs and just claim that the experiment was weird, and that's okay because, sometimes things are weird. So that was a kind of a cop-out, and it's also bad science.
Yeah, and you could understand that in 1929, but we've gone through several decades now where we've been kind of spinning our wheels of understanding.
We've gone through almost 100 years.
And we're still no further ahead in the sort of dichotomy of that,
right.
that loggerhead. And what we're starting to discover now is that not just scientists like Tom, but many other scientists are coming to the conclusion that the virtual reality model just does better physics. And even people like, for example, the biologist Bruce Lipton. I'm a big fan of Bruce. Wrote the book The Biology of Belief. Hardcore left brain biologist that, in face of the evidence that he was presented with in the lab, started to open his mind more to the fact that there's, this is not just about the genes, this is not just about the cells, there is something larger at work, and is now a very, what I would call, evolved spiritual scientists. You've got people like Joe Dispenza, who is chiropractor, very left brain for a long time, and then started to get evidential experience himself, and that led him onto a path of being able to explore consciousness. And Joe right now is a great model as well for being able to bring into the traditional science paradigm the fact that, hey guys, here's the data, it's not fitting, and the experience doesn't match either. And then you have people like Robert Lanza, who wrote the book, Biocentrism, which is basically saying, listen, science, you're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. Right. And then not just scientists, you've got people like Elon Musk, who also back the virtual reality model, albeit from a slightly different perspective. The point being here, guys, is that as we move forward in human evolution and understanding, the responsibility on our generation to essentially educate ourselves out of belief blindness so we're no longer spinning our wheels is paramount. And that's what Tom's looking to do. Now, before I explain a little more about the Kickstarter, I want to ask Tom, what are the implications of people coming to the awareness in science that we live in essentially a virtual computed-based reality that is essentially telling us to grow up emotionally and spiritually?
Yes. Well, the implications, Peter, are huge. They're really big implications. And that is living in a information-based reality, which is what scientists are saying. And more physicists are coming to this too. There's a very large subgroup of physics now that it's called digital physics that is very pro virtual reality. But mostly they only get as far as saying this is a information-based reality. But they don't know what to do after that. That's as far as they'll take it. But an information-based reality means that everything that happens here is really just information. Well, the question is, where does the information come from? Information just doesn't pop out of nothing. And the logical answer to that is it's computed. So an information-based reality is a computed reality, which is a simulation, which is a virtual reality. So the idea that it's an information-based reality can't be anything other than it's a virtual reality, a computed reality. In a computed reality, there's a few basic logical things to understand. One is that the computer that computes it can't be inside the reality that it computes. So one of the fundamental things about a virtual reality is that the computer that computes it cannot be inside that virtual reality. The elf will not find the server that's creating World of Warcraft inside of World of Warcraft. It has to be outside of the virtual reality it creates. The server does. Has to be outside of what it creates, which means from inside the virtual reality, let's say from the elf's perspective, the computer has to be non-physical. Okay? Now, the computed reality is just ones and zeros, just computations. The elf himself cannot be conscious. The elf's consciousness has to be supplied by a player, and the player also has to be non-physical to the elf's viewpoint. You see, because the player is talking to the computer. That's really what virtual reality is about. It's a conversation, or it's a data exchange between the player and the computer. The actual virtual reality itself is just a picture, just eye candy to keep track of what's going on and what the consequences are of the decisions that the player makes and of the consequences that the computer computes. Okay? So the reason this is going to have a big impact when science finally says, yes, this is a virtual reality, and they're getting very close to saying that because they're being drugged kicking and screaming into this reality that it's an information-based reality, a computed, a virtual reality. Well, to say that, as I've just outlined the logic, means that this reality, this physical universe of ours, is a subset of something that is more fundamental. That's where it's being computed. And that subset is non-physical to our perspective here in this virtual reality. Well, that's a huge thing for science to say. When physicists say, guess what, folks? You know, we're a subset of something much more fundamental, and that much more fundamental thing is non-physical to us. Well, that will change everything as far as the way people see themselves. You know, well, then who are we? Why are we here? This body's just an avatar. I'm really consciousness. Consciousness doesn't die, avatars die. I'm immortal. Oh, you know, what's going on, and what's the point of this virtual reality? Virtual realities don't just pop up because of no reason. Virtual reality has to be created. You know, it has to evolve from something, and there's a purpose to it.
Yeah.
So what's our purpose? See, suddenly we have purpose. Before we had no purpose. It's just a material thing that was just doing its thing for no reason. So we gain things like this bigger perspective, who we are, what we are. We're not a body, we're consciousness. We're a player playing a body, and we have a purpose. We're in this virtual reality for some reason. And what is that reason? As you began earlier, it's to evolve. It's to increase the information. It's an information system to increase the value, the meaning, the content, the significance of the information. And you do that in a social system, as you say, through cooperation. Okay, so we're individuated units of consciousness. We're here to learn how to grow up, how to cooperate, and how to have compassion and caring for each other, because that optimizes any social system.
Yeah.
And consciousness is a social system. It's a bunch of pieces of things that interact with each other. That's what consciousness is. And a social system optimizes itself by becoming love. So when I say love is the answer, that's not because that's a pretty set of words that sounds nice and it's a metaphysical ideal. It's not. It's a logical requirement. Once you understand reality, you understand that that is science. That's a logical requirement. That's why we're here. That's the point of our existence, our being, and of this physical reality. So these experiments that I have, that I'm trying to fund through Kickstarter, what they will do is they will be very, very convincing. They will have very hard, very firm evidence that indeed this is a virtual reality and that consciousness is the computer. That will be the only logical explanation that will explain the results of these experiments. So that will start this ball rolling. That will start science saying, well, okay, this looks like it's a virtual reality, and then all the rest of this logic we're talking about, oh, if it's a virtual reality, it's computed. Oh, if it's computed, there's something fundamental that's non-physical to us, and oh, why? And why is it there? And that will lead to love is the answer, you see. So when love is the answer is a logical outcome of science, suddenly it's not going to be relegated to the margins anymore.
Yeah.
Love is the answer has always been around for millennia in the margins.
Yeah.
But it's never been able to go mainstream. Materialism has always elbowed it out. But when the scientists, the high priests of Western culture, as you pointed out, say that this is the way it is, now we have the first chance ever for it to go mainstream, because the authorities are saying things that support it, and we have the internet, which can spread it worldwide rather than it being relegated to a small set of people who understand bigger pictures, but nobody else does. So this is a big opportunity to not only grow ourselves up, but to change the whole world in the sense of how we view ourselves, how we view each other, how we view our purpose, what we're here for. And if people understand that and get oriented to it, then everything will change.
Everything will change.
Everything will change. Science will change. All of science will now be based on something different. And that will change. Biology will change, and physics will change, and everything will change. But the big change that's really important is that we will change. People will change, and how they relate to each other will change. And that gives it at least a possibility of becoming a kinder, gentler, nicer place to live here. And I hope that possibility comes sooner rather than later. You know, maybe within a couple of decades. That's optimistic, but you know, maybe a little longer than that. But I think we'll get there now.
Well, you're certainly doing your part to try to facilitate that, Tom, and I'm very happy to throw my weight and support behind that as well. And yeah, and essentially, guys, this is certainly not in conflict with any of the messages that have been permeating throughout human history for centuries. In terms of every great spiritual master, every great spiritual teacher taught the same thing. Yeah, how to be kinder, how to come from unconditional love, more compassion, to experience more joy through cooperation and letting go of ego, letting go of fear. And regardless of what cover you put on the book, behind that, the message is pretty much the same. So to have science and philosophy, spirituality and religion converge in a single point that is backed up by an experiment or a series of experiments done in the lab under the most preeminent level of conditions that science can accept is a very exciting time and a great opportunity to be part of. So, and if you want to know a little bit more about the actual experiments Tom's going to be doing, you can go to his YouTube channel. He's outlined them on there. There are different variations of the classic double slit experiment and some of the delayed choice quantum eraser experiments that I've spoken about before in some of my work. And it's just fascinating to be a part of this. You don't need to know the science. All you need to know is if you get behind this, if you want to go back this at whatever level, if this resonates, then you'll be part of being able to bring the next epoch of human understanding to a place where we can all get along a little better, all start to love each other a little more, and make the world a better place. So if this resonates, this is give you a bit more context for understanding what we're doing here. Go check out the information. Go check out Tom's work. I highly encourage you to do that. And go click the Kickstarter campaign. Have a look. There's so many things on there. You can get involved at several levels. In fact, if you want to have a look at Tom's book, this is my copy. My Big Toe is in Theory of Everything. It's a little bit of a monster, but I don't think there's a page on here. I haven't got some notes on somewhere. But if you want to get a signed copy of this, you can do it just by contributing a little bit to the Kickstarter program. You can get all sorts of stuff. If you want to be an executive producer behind the documentary that's following this, if you want to be part of the the people in the lab watching the experiments, that's all available. Go check it out, please. I implore you. This is the best opportunity I've come across in my lifetime for the average person in the street like you and I to be a part of something so great that we could impact the world from here on to make it a better place. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you, Tom, for your contribution here, and I'm very happy to be a part of this in some way, to try and put a little thumbprint of support on it with me and the people that I'm blessed enough to be able to contribute and talk to. And let's see if we can get this thing done and go change the world.
Let's do it.
Outstanding. Thanks, man.